perfect?
Lovely.
Is that lovely?
Pretty sexy. Baby, don't leave
No,
me.
I won't.
This channel is for mature audiences only. If you're underage on this channel, your parents' mom should have swallowed them or spit them out.
This is Internal Sadist, and this is going to be Red Pill Science. Live 2, basically. This one's going to cover, basically, attitude, how you carry yourself, how you look, how you act, basically. And the outcome to all that stuff. So basically, this is going to be your parent, your attitude, and how you act. Red Pill Science. The problem with a lot of this, and this is what a lot of people fail to realize, especially i.e. women, when it comes to this, is how you look, how you act, and how you portray yourself is a direct representation of you and how people view you and how people perceive you. Sad part about that is it's fine when women do it to other people, but when people do it to women, it's a whole nother problem or it's a whole nother story. The sad part about that, it's a problem, for the fact that, women don't want to be judged based on how they look. But the sad part about that, I've always said, if you look the part, you act the part, you are the part, sadly. It's kind of like an addict. Once an addict, always an addict, basically. Or once a hoe, always a hoe, for all intents and purposes, is the best way I could put it to you. The sad part about that is you run into a lot of people who believe that just because they dress a certain way, they should be treated a whole another way. That'd be like if I dressed in a halter top and some very, very tight pants and I had pasties, I'd probably be assumed to be gay, sadly. The sad part about that is I can't be mad at how people view me if that's how they view me. I can't be mad at my parents and my outward look if that's how they basically view me. The sad part about that is a lot of people are going to view it that way. A good example of that is I typically dress very decent and well put together for work. The sad part about that is there's other people who do the same damn thing. And what I've noticed with them is a lot of people assume that they are gay based on how they dress. Like if you're a man and you're well put together and everything's matching, but it's not like a suit and it's like, let's just say a button-down shirt and some gray jeans or gray pants or something like that, and it's matching, people typically assume you're gay, sadly. The sad part about that is if you were to take that in to turn it towards a woman, you would be seen as being mean and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover when in fact they did the exact same thing to you. Sadly. Case in point is women with short haircuts. In all technicality, you would assume that they're lesbians for all intents and purposes. The sad part about that is based on how they look, that's the interpretation or what's the word I'm looking for? That is the perception that you gain from them, basically. And the sad part about that is I love how perception works in women's favor, but when you're a man and you're working off of perception, it works against you for some odd reason, which is very sad. The sad part about that is when it comes down to it, what a lot of people fail to realize is perception is king, whether you like it or not. Perception is king. The fundamental difference between how people view you and how people see you is different from how you view and see yourself, sadly. The sad part about that is you can't sit up here and pretend as if because you're dressed provocatively, that people aren't going to view you in a certain light. The sad part about that is we live in a society where that's an actual thing and people believe that, dressing to get attention, they're not dressing to get attention when in fact they're actually dressing to get attention. They try to paint that in a narrative where that's how they normally dress. So the sad part about that is I love how they use that narrative where they say This is how I normally dress. The sad part about that is you don't dress like that for work, so therefore you cannot sit up here and tell me this is how you normally dress, sadly. You don't dress like that for church, so you can't sit up here and tell me that's how you normally dress, and that's who you are, sadly. If that's how you normally are, you would go to church like that, you would go to school like that, you would go to work like that, but you don't. So, this is the overall problem that I have with a lot of people who say this stuff or say this dumb stuff to me. Another case in point is how people act. Now, typically, I'm gonna use an example of black people, African Americans who are from the hood. They basically typically act a certain way, behave a certain way, because they believe that's how they should act, and that's the cool thing to do, and that's that's what all the rappers is doing, and that's how all the freaking movies are portraying this stuff. When in fact, that's not really how gangsters really act. Sadly, that's how gangsters act in Hollywood, but how gangsters actually act and move in real life is a totally different story. Sadly, this is where a lot of people get it messed up and twisted. People want to betray a certain life that they're not, or betray themselves to be a certain way when they say, "What's all I know? This is who I am." Well, the sad part about that is that's not really who you are. Who you are is based on who you are. Who you're trying to portray is based on what you see on TV. Who you are is a totally different thing. Again, the same thing can be applied. Do you act like that at church? Do you act like that at work? Then get out my face with that bullcrap. And the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, you run into a lot of these problems where you have a lot of these people who believe that they can act and betray themselves in a certain light and pretend as if, none of the stuff that they do and say has any bearing on their attitude or how they're perceived or any of the above, sadly. The sad part about that is it has a lot to do with how you're perceived and how people view you at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. The cold irony to it is a lot of people want to be seen as this. A lot of people want to be seen as this person who is original when in fact you're just nothing more than a carbon copy of everybody else under the sun, sadly. The cold reality is no matter how you cut it, no matter how well you try to hide it or mask it, or you're going to be perceived in a certain light, whether you like it or not. How you dress, how you walk, how you move, how you act, all that is seen and taken into account. The sad part about that is another good example of that is women. Women would perceive people as a threat or perceive people as ugly and stuff like that. But the sad part about that, or perceive somebody as a gangster or a thug or and things like that. And that's perfectly fine for a woman to do it. Now, the minute I look at somebody, a woman, and perceive her as a hoe, or say that she has hoe tendencies, or say she's ratchet or any of these things, now I'm wrong. What's up, Chris Mitchell? Now I'm wrong. And now I gotta be talked to, and I gotta be told how I should be perceived things. Sad part about that is if you walk it, you talk it, and you act it, you dress it, this is typically how I'm going to perceive you, whether you like it or not. It's not something that, it's not something that's part of the patriarchy. It's basically my perception of you and how you act and how you move through the world, sadly. Just like everybody else's perception. Like I was saying, it's perfectly fine for a woman to have a perception of a situation, but when a man has a perception of a situation, there's a problem, and he's not allowed to have one, basically. The sad part about that is this is what a lot of people fail to realize. We'll talk about like how people dress and walk, or dress and act. Women always have this, especially with feminism. Women have this thing where they believe that they should be able to walk around with no shirt on without consequences. The sad part about that is that's not going to happen for first off. Secondly, there's these things called breasts that you have that men don't have, and that would be a problem, and that would be a distraction to public. Not only would that be a distraction to public, that would actually cause accidents, and that would cause cause crime to actually go up higher, sadly. The problem with that is when you actually put something out there, putting out like a good example. What's up, Chris? The problem with that is when you present something out there that's of value, or that's of that's seen as a thing, you're going to invite the wrong attention. You're going to invite the wrong people to you, sadly. So if you're going to go outside with no shirt on and walk around with no titties, your titties hanging out, you can't be shocked when people respond the way they do. You can't be shocked when you get the attention that you claim you don't want, sadly. Because at the end of the day, what's going to come down to it is, like I always say, 10 to 15% of the world has sick valve people in it who would do sick valve things to any living thing and any human being, whether you like it or not. As long as those people exist, that idea that you would walk around naked or without no shirt on still looms an impossibility, basically. It's not even plausible. It's just impossible for the fact that you got people out here that literally do sick valve things to anything, any living thing, and any living person, basically. So when that goes away, then maybe we can talk about stuff like that. Sad part about that is that's never going to go away. That's never going to go away. And there's always going to be that growing problem, and it's going to just keep on getting bigger and wider, and it's going to be a large margin on how many people are doing this to other people, sadly, if we allow activities like this to occur. This is the problem with women. Women saying that they should be able to walk around with no top on would be like me saying, I want to park my my Morgan Super Sport, Aero Super Sport in the middle of the hood with the keys in the car, door wide open, and nothing should happen to it because, privilege or no feelings. No, it can't. It doesn't work like that. That Morgan Super Sport is going to be stolen, just like you're going to be harassed by people who don't think too kindly of the law, who don't follow the law, and who don't give two shits about the law at the end of the damn day. So what you can't sit up here and tell me is that you should be able to do something that's damn near impossible to do without being harassed by somebody. Because it doesn't work like that. You're always going to be harassed by somebody, whether you like it or not. It's never going to go away, and you got to just suck it up, sadly. I get that it's scary, but you taking off your shirt doesn't make it any more comfortable. You just make it a lot more worse, sadly. And it's just stuff like this that just blows my mind when I hear women say this dumb stuff out their mouths. Like, I want you to finish your thought before you say dumb stuff. I really want you to finish your thought before you say some more dumb stuff. Finish that thought and then say dumb stuff and then think back what you just said to me. And it's one of those things where like, oh, well, this, that, and the other. What's up, Auntie Grifter? And the sad part about that is you get a lot of people who will say these things and believe these things so wholeheartedly that when something happens to them, they'll say something like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen, and this, that, and the other, and or you'll get the opposite. The people that live in the world of unicorns and rainbows, where they'll say, well, that would never happen to me, and then it happens, and it's like, well, I can't believe that happened to me. Well, I can believe it happened to you. Oh, because I can believe it happened to you. Now I'm wrong for knowing this. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. And this is the thing this is the problem that I have with people, because at the end of the day, how you act, your appearance, and what you wear, your appearance, how you act, and how you behave is a big in your attitude is a big proponent in how people perceive you in this world. Sad part about that is because I don't wear skinny boy jeans. I hate skinny boy jeans. Because I don't wear skinny boy jeans and I don't dress like the rappers, I'm perceived as somebody more dangerous than somebody who does that. So typically, people typically avoid me at all costs in public because I don't fit the stereotypical mold on what a black man is supposed to be wearing in this day and age, which is typically your skinny boy jeans and or a dress and or some ridiculous outfit that society has constructed for black men to wear in this day and age. Basically, I don't look like Lil Wayne, nor do I dress like Lil Nas X, so therefore I'm dangerous, obviously. It's typically everybody's perception of me in public, which is actually pretty funny. But the sad part about that is all these people that walk around wearing skinny boy jeans, white people are more likely to interact with them than they are to interact with me at the end of the day, which is actually a pretty interesting thing. But these guys that run around acting gangster apparently aren't really gangster to white people, sadly. Because white people will come up to them, talk to them, and ask them millions and millions of questions, but they won't come to me and ask me a damn thing because I don't fit the part. I'm not either wearing a skirt, a dress, or some skinny boy jeans, so therefore I'm a dangerous man of color, sadly. And this is typically how a lot of this stuff works. I agree, they should be. And this is typically how this stuff actually works. And this is and that's what it comes down to when it comes down to perception. If you're a black person and you're wearing skinny boy jeans, if you're a black man and you're wearing skinny boy jeans or a skin tight shirt or skinny boy jeans in general, and you're wearing a dress like Lil Nas X or that one black guy, you're more acceptable and they're more willing to talk to you. If you dress like me in public, they're less likely to talk to you and you're more intimidating and you might rob them. Typically the perception that I get when it comes to people like that, sadly. And a funny thing about that is when it comes down to it, that's the perception of all those people. The sad part about that, when it comes to men not wanting to date women because they act and dress a certain way, all of a sudden now judging a book by its cover is wrong. But 5 seconds ago, when you were calling me a criminal or accusing me of being a criminal, it was perfectly fine. But the minute I don't want to date you because how you act, because you act ratchet or you dress like a hooker or a hoe, now there's a problem on how I feel about it and how I feel about you and stuff like that, which is the double standard I've always found funny. And the sad part about that is, at the end of the day, we live in a world where men aren't allowed to have preferences, but women are. Men, if you have a preference, then you're seen as a weak man and you're seen as not really a real man, when in fact, a real man doesn't stand for none of this crap. A sissy boy will stand for any of this crap. A beta male will stand for all of this crap. But a real man is not going to stand for the bullshit, basically, at the end of the damn day. So a real man will tell you how he feels about you, when he feels it about you, why he feels it about you, and why you didn't make the cut why you didn't make the cut, sadly. And this is typically one of those things that a lot of people run into when they say, well, that's not how a man should act, or that's not how you should treat a lady. And a real man would take on a single mom and her children. Well, no, a real man wouldn't do that. First off, a real man wants his own damn family. A real man would actually not stand for the bullcrap and hold you accountable. This is why a lot of women run from real men. Because the sad part about that, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, what you ain't going to sit up here and tell me is that because I'm holding you accountable, I'm not a real man. No, I'm holding you accountable, bitch. There's a reason why I'm holding you accountable. The sad part about that is the sad part about that is at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, whether you like it or not, I have not perceptions on you based on how I was raised. It's not because of the patriarchy, it's because of culture. It's not because of any of the stupid shit that you want to say. It's because that's how I was taught by my grandmother, and that's how she was taught by her mother, and that's how she was taught by her mother, how a lady is supposed to conduct herself. So if you don't fit the mold in which I believe in, and and which I know actually exists, then you're not really a real woman to me. Basically, you're basically a little girl trying to portray herself as a woman at the end of the day, or you're a princess trying to pretend to be a queen who hasn't really went through the queen training or the etiquette training, sadly, for girls. And the sad part about that is what you can't sit up here and do is tell me that I should have to accept something based on because you want to dress a certain way, act a certain way, and be a certain way, but I'm supposed to accept it, and I cannot not accept it because I'm wrong, because that's not how society works. Then I have to return fire with you dressing the way you are is typically like how I always say with my Morgan Super Sport. You want to be able to dress this way and not get hit on by the wrong people or anybody. I would like to be able to park my Morgan Super Sport in the middle of the hood with the keys in the ignition while it's running, with the door wide open, and I would like it not to be stolen. Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? The sad part about that is what you can't do is sit up here and wear something that attracts attention to you, then get mad about the attention that you get. That's kind of like when I ride around in my that's kind of like when I ride around in my my Challenger, orange Challenger. I cannot be mad at the fact that orange Challenger gets me a lot of fucking attention, sadly. The sad part about that is it's loud, it's orange, and it's going to garner a lot of fucking attention. The sad part about that is you paying me that you getting mad about me, a man paying attention to how you dress or whistling at you or trying to ask you out will be like me getting mad that you're paying attention to my car, you're sitting on my car, and you're looking at my car. And you're telling me nice car. That's the exact same thing in the same line of thought that you would normally have. The lovely thing about perception is it's one thing when you believe a man to be broke, and then all of a sudden he gets in a nice car, and all of a sudden now you're turned on by him and you're attracted to him because he has a nice car. It's fine, but it's perfectly fine for you to, didn't want to be attracted to somebody who has a nice car, but you want to dress a certain way and people pay you attention. That's a problem. But it's perfectly fine for you to be attracted to me because now I drive a nice car. How's that work? How's that work? You can't sit up here and say dumb stuff like that to me and expect me to not want to, for me to not to respond the way I do. I'm typically an asshole because I typically tell this. This is the best way I can tell people. I'm an asshole for two reasons. One, it helps me weed out the real from the counterfeit very quickly. I'm an asshole because it helps me weed out the real from the counterfeit. So I can typically tell who's there for reals and who's there for fakes, or who's there to mooch and who's there to actually help out for all intents and purposes. The other reason why I'm an asshole is because I'm typically an asshole by nature. If you don't like me being an asshole, then that means you can't accept me for who I am. Just like I have to accept a woman for being fat, you have to accept me for being an asshole at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. It was how I was raised, whether you like it or not. It's not toxic masculinity, exactly how I was raised. And the sad part about that is the reason why I know it's not toxic masculinity. I was taught by my granddad and my grandmother how to be an asshole, basically. And it worked perfectly fine for me. Being a nice person doesn't work for me. Being an asshole works for me quite well. Here's how I know that being an asshole works for me quite well. Because I've never had a problem with getting a date or a girl for all intents and purposes because I'm an asshole. Now, if I was being nice, I would have all the problems in the world with getting one. The sad part about that is because I'm an asshole, I have zero problems with getting a woman or getting the attention of a woman or getting a woman that I actually want. It is what it is. That being said, being an asshole is basically a part of who I am. Yeah, a real man would do that. David Eden, what's up, brother? The sad part about that is, at the end of the day, I like people who are actually going to be in my corner. I don't like people who fake like they're going to be in my corner. I don't like people who pretend that they're going to be in my corner. If you're not going to be in my corner, you'll be quickly weeded out very quickly. And if you have a problem with my attitude, then obviously you have a problem with me and you don't need to be around me at the end of the daggone day. It's typically how this shit works. It works perfectly fine for me. And before somebody say, well, what if you meet a nice person? Well, obviously that person wasn't nice enough for me. Obviously that person wasn't meant for me. And that's exactly how I view a lot of shit when it comes down to it. Because the sad part about that, people would try to say that, good example is, I have a friend who has another friend that I'm not friends with because I don't like her, who dresses pretty much like a hoe, or a hood rat chick, or a goofy chick from that looked like she would hang out in a trap house, basically. The sad part about that is she gets mad when you talk about her friend bats, basically. And the sad part about that is people will always say, well, she's a good person. She would always say, well, she's a good person because of this. Despite the fact that she dressed like that, she has that attitude, and she acts like that, she's a good person. Okay, that's nice. So you're trying to tell me that if a person acts a certain way and does certain things, they're good people still. Okay, so what if you had a friend that slept with all your boyfriends? Would that person still be a nice, good person? By your logic, because they're your friend, they're a good person, even though they slept with all your boyfriends. Well, that's different. No, that's not different. That's the same thing. It's the same thing. How you carry yourself and who you associate with pretty much dictates how people see you and view you. The sad part about that is it's very rare to see somebody who hangs with a bunch of people and them not be an average of their friends or an average of all those people. The sad part about that is, like I always say, you are an average of your friends at the end of the day. Male or female, you're an average of your friends. So if you have hoe friends, you have chicken head friends, you have ratchet friends, you have somewhat decent friends, you're an average of all those people. If you have good friends, and you have gangster friends, and you have criminal friends, you're average of all those people, whether you like it or not. And this is typically how it looks when it looks in public. The sad part about that, you'll get people that'll try to be nice and say, well, since you're friends with them, obviously that person can't be a bad person. Now, that quote right there alone is both dangerous and loaded, for the fact that, like I said earlier, you saying that just because that person is friends with that person, that they can't be a bad person, or they can't be all that bad, and you're friends with them, obviously that person is getting in on the strength of you. Now, the sad part about that is, going back to the friend who slept with all your boyfriends, the sad part about that is, at the end of the day, if you keep a person around that does you wrong repeatedly, that doesn't really paint you in a favorable light at the end of the day. That doesn't paint you in a favorable light in the least. Because the sad part about that is, what a lot of people fail to realize about stuff like that is, your group of friends are a reflection of who you are and anything about you at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. And people will say stupid stuff like, well, it doesn't mean anything like that, and stuff like that. Or a woman would say, well, I cheated on my boyfriend because he didn't pay me attention. Okay, cool. The sad part about that is, anytime a woman cheats on a man and he takes her back, she actually has less respect for him at the end of the daggone day, whether you like it or not. The sad part about that is, a lot of times when somebody cheats on somebody, if a woman was to cheat on a man, the men would be guilted into taking that woman back and say, "You can work it out. You've been doing this for years. This, that, and the other." They'll use all these excuses in the world to try to make that man take that woman back. Sadly, the sad part about that is when a woman cheats, when a woman gets cheated on, it's, "Oh, you live your truth, girl. You didn't have to give them no D. You don't have to give them no sex and this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other." And that's typically how that stuff works. The sad part about that is, always ask men who get cheated on, "Okay, fine. Your wife cheated on you. This is exactly how she feels. I'm going to set the scenario up for you. Let's just say you banged her mother, you banged her sister, you banged her cousin, you banged her friend, and you banged her aunt. And she wants to take you back. How would you feel about that person if they wanted to take you back after you did all this stuff to them?" I don't know if I can go back to that person. I don't think I would have respect for that person. Well, obviously, that's exactly how women feel about you when they cheat on you and you take them back. Sadly, they have very less respect for you. The lower there's respect and their value for you actually drops and plummets whenever you take them back after they cheat on you. Sadly, the sad part about that is men are more likely to be guilted into taking on stupid stuff like that than women are. Whereas women are told, "Oh, you're strong and you're an independent girl, you go girl," and this, that, and the other, and that's perfectly fine. The minute a man doesn't want to take back a woman that cheated, when you're throwing away 10 years or 20 years or 7 years, and this, that, and the other, and you got kids, and they use all the tricks of the trade and all the shit in the book to try to throw it at you just so you can go back to that person. Sadly, they say, "Well, obviously your fault, and you got to make it work, and this, that, and the other." Oh, they use everything against a man. Sadly, they always will. And the sad part about that is basically how society is set up. It's set up in a way where we're just supposed to accept the fact that we got people out here cheating, or we got people out here acting and portraying themselves in a certain light, but they don't want to be seen as such. They want to be seen differently. It's kind of like the woman who comes to work with her titties hanging out, but she wants to be seen as an intelligent person with her titties hanging out. I'm sorry. I have very little respect for people, or I'm less likely going to see you as intelligent if your titties are hanging out, sadly. Only thing smart about that is you'll probably get a lot of people to do your work for you. That's the only thing smart about that. Just because you can get everybody to do your work for you, that doesn't make you smart. That just makes you manipulative, sadly. And that's typically how a lot of this stuff works. And the sad part about that is the more men can actually see that realistically, the better off a lot of men would be. Because the sad part about that is, at the end of the day, manipulation is manipulation. It's not being smart. When you're told that you have to accept something, you're being forced to manipulate it into liking something, sadly. If it doesn't come as a natural progression for you to do it, then you're being manipulated and forced into doing it, sadly. At the end of the day, whether you like it or not. And the sad part about that is, when it comes down to it, you have women who believe that they should be able to act and look and talk a certain way, and a man should be able to handle them. Now, when I hear that line, the first thing I think of is cattle. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear a woman say something to the extent of, "A real man would be able to handle me. A real man would be able to handle me, or take control of me, or do this." The first thing that comes to mind is me roping an ox and then hog tying the bitch, basically. That's exactly the first thought that comes to mind. So, unless you see yourself as an animal, that's how I perceive you as an animal if I have to control you. That means I need tranquilizer darts and I need to tag your ass, and we need to come back during the next migration year and check on you, basically. That's literally what I think, being somebody who's taking care of animals and has raised animals. If I got to handle you, that means I got to shoot you, tranquilize you, and shoot you with a tracking device, basically, and come back and check on you next year. That is literally my actual thoughts. when I hear people say that. A real man can handle me. Okay. Here's the thing when it comes to it. It's kind of like when people say when people tell me something was an accident, I usually tell them a car accident, two cars colliding is an accident. An icicle falling in your eye is an accident. You slipping and falling at work is an accident. The same thing goes for, when the same thing goes for behavior. It's not an accident, nor is any of that stuff. All that stuff can be prevented. The sad part about that is you don't want to control yourself, and you don't want to act the part. So therefore, you want to act a certain way, and you believe that everybody else should accept you for who you are. The sad part about that is that's not how that works. That's not how that works in the least bit. You can't walk around and act like a man and expect a man to accept you the way you are. Not a lot of men are going to accept you the way you are. Well, actually, no, let me rephrase that. There are a lot of men out there that will accept you the way you are and will two-piece biscuit you and a two-piece in a biscuit your ass in a heartbeat. And when I say two-piece in a biscuit, I mean lay your ass out and put the biscuit under your head like a pillow and let you go to sleep. Hit you with a thigh and a wing and put the biscuit under your head, basically. It's typically how that works. There's a lot of men out there that would do that shit. So when I think of a woman being handled, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. When I say a real man can handle me, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. I'm automatically think, tranquilize and tag for next year, and come back and check on it in a wild, or a wild animal in general. And the sad part about that is it's basically all about perception. How you carry yourself is all about perception. A lot of women walk around like men. A lot of women walk around what I refer to as the stank nigga hoe walk. For those of you who don't know what the stank nigga hoe walk is, it's basically a woman that walks around like a man, but like a hoe at the same damn time. They got like the hoe walk, but they got the nigga walk, basically. And how they walk around is basically the stank nigga hoe walk. So basically they walk around like a man, but it's mixed with like walking around like a hoe at the same damn time. They dress like a hoe, but they walk around like a man. Stank nigga hoe walk, basically. I'm sorry. But the sad part about that is when you see people do that, it's basically like the one video I've made about how women walk on their feet these days. They walk so damn heavy on their damn feet, it's like they're stomping. It's almost like, think of it like the Jurassic Park movie when people want to know a dinosaur is coming. They basically look at a water or a liquid, and the minute it starts rippling, they know that a dinosaur is coming before the dinosaur actually gets there. Like, they may not hear the footsteps yet, but as soon as they see something rippling, they know that there's something nearby about to run up on their ass, basically. It's typically how it works. And the sad part about that, that's exactly how a lot of women in this day and age walk. Like, if they're wearing slides or heels or any of that stuff, especially if they're wearing slides or heels or shoes, all you hear is dump, 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 dump. It's like this hard-ass walk on their fucking feet. The sad part about that, what that actually lets you know when a woman walks around like that is, one, she's lazy. Two, she doesn't take care of herself. And three, she's low quality. If a woman can walk around, that'd be no different than a person walking around sliding her feet across the ground. If you ever heard, I'm pretty sure you've heard people walk and their feet slide across the ground as they walk. That person is lazy, low quality, and don't take care of themselves either. At the end of the day, it's the same concept, but people always miss it and not understand. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, everybody's perception is going to be different. People are going to like women that walk like stank nigga hoes, basically. People are going to like women who have the stank nigga hoe walk. Those are typically men who are fuckboys, men who are players, or men who are beta males, basically. will like women who, the sad part about that, fuckboys and players only want to hit it. Beta males actually really want to wife it up, sadly. That's typically how a lot of that shit works. So if you have a stank nigga hoe walk, you might want to look for a beta male if you're a woman. If you have the stank nigga hoe walk, sadly. Because any self-respecting man is not going to want to date you. Now, there are fuckboys who have very little to no respect that'll fuck you. There are players who will fuck you. There are men that will fuck you. But the sad part about that is a high-quality man is not going to want to date somebody with the stank nigga hoe walk, sadly. Another thing that a lot of people have when it comes to, their attitude. Attitude is important. Attitude is always important. Attitude is one of those things that shines through when somebody first meets you. First is how you look and how you appear to that person, and the shit that come out of your mouth the minute after, sadly. The sad part about that, when it comes to dating and talking to people, a lot of times, a lot of people are lost within the first few words because they sounded stupid, or they sounded dumb, or they sounded a certain way, or they sounded nerdy, or they sounded like they were too smart, or they sounded like they were too educated, or they sounded like they were all the above, basically. Basically, that disqualifies them from somebody's mind because they don't seem as though that they are a person that they would be attracted to. And that's typically how that stuff works. So I've always said, if you're going to be a criminal, you don't want to look like a criminal. You don't want to look and act like a criminal if you're going to be a criminal. You're going to want to look like something, basically, because there's a fundamental difference. If you see a black man walk down the street with baggy pants, or skinny boy jeans, baggy and are sagging, you're typically going to think that they're a hoodlum or a thug, or they subscribe to the thug culture, basically. If you see a white man walking down the street, if you see an Italian man or a Latino walking down the street in a suit, you're going to think that they might be a businessman, or they might be a mogul, or they might be somebody of some importance, sadly. When in fact they might actually be in a mob or the cartel. You see what I'm saying? Perception. Perception is always key. This is typically why I've always said, if you're going to be a criminal, don't look or act like a criminal. Look like a businessman. This is typically why the mafia and the cartels are so successful at flying under the radar or being who they are. They don't dress like they're from the streets. They dress like they're going to a board meeting. They dress like they're going to go meet somebody to, they're going to the bank to actually take out a loan so they can start a business. They dress like a business owner. They dress like they are aspiring to be a business. Now, don't get me wrong. What they're doing is technically a business. So they do technically dress the part within, if you think about it. But the sad part about that is you would never know unless they told you that they're either cartel or mafia at the end of the daggone day. This is typically how it's supposed to work if you're going to be a criminal. You're not supposed to be out there acting like a dumbass, dressing like a dumbass in the streets, because everybody's going to know that that's that person, and that's the person who's doing this, that, and the other. That's the thug. That's the drug dealer. That's that person, basically. Everybody's going to know based on a perception on what they see and know in pop culture. You're a thug or you're a drug dealer in the story. You're a gangbanger, thug, or drug dealer at the end of the day. The sad part about that is this is how the mafia is basically able to escape a lot of shit and not be bothered based on the fact that they're wearing suits, or they're dressed pretty nicely, or they're dressed very casual. You're not going to want to bother somebody that's dressed very casual. You might want to rob somebody who's dressed very casual, but typically, as a human being, if you're a cop, you're not going to fuck with somebody that's dressed casually or dressed up, period. You're more likely to fuck with the person who's acting like, a rapper, or, a white boy acting like a thug, basically, or, just have that ghetto mentality, sadly. You're more likely to fuck with those people, sadly. And people don't seem to understand that or get that. When it comes to that, it's like, well, you might believe that this is you, but the sad part about that, like I've said multiple times, do you act like this at church? Do you act like this in the library? Do you act like this at work? If you don't, then that's not you. So let it go, sadly. Because people will say, well, I got my black voice and I got my white voice when I'm around these people. Well, no, you're just acting. You're just very much acting. If you gotta act, if you gotta have a certain voice or a certain thing or a certain way you carry yourself for certain people, you're not being real and you're being very fake at the end of the day. I don't have a white voice. I don't have a black voice. I'm just pretty much like this all the fucking time. I don't change for anybody. I don't change for a meeting. I don't change for white people. I don't change for Asian people. I don't change for Arabs. I don't change for black people. I don't change for Latinos. I don't change for Jamaicans. I don't change for Haitians. I don't change for anybody. I don't change for the director. I don't change for the judge. I don't change for the cops. I don't change for anybody. I am who I am at the end of the daggone day. I talk based on how I feel at that moment in time. If I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling like an asshole, I'm going to be an asshole. If I'm in a good mood, I'm typically going to be a nicer person, sadly. I basically act and talk based on how I feel. Just like how I move and how I do things. I do it based on how I feel. Because the sad part about that is what I do know about, the human body and, the psychology of a human is based on how you feel that day is going to be different than how you feel another day, sadly. So your body will move, bend and flex and react differently if you're angry or if you're happy or if you're sad or if you're depressed or if you're in pain or if you're tired or if you're, all the above, sadly. Your body and your attitude basically reflects how you actually feel that day at that moment in time, sadly. So basically, I move and talk based on how I feel that day or that moment at the end of the day. And this is where a lot of people fail at, because a lot of people try to, be at the top of their game even when their head's not in it, or be at the top of their game when they're not there emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and or pain wise, they're not there. I typically stay on top of my game by moving based on how I feel. Case in point, I'm pretty sure y'all have woken up in the morning and something was in pain or something was hurting you more than it would normally hurt you, or you slept wrong and your lower back was hurting, or you slept wrong and your sciatic nerve was hurting, or you slept wrong and your arm was hurting. The sad part about that is, let's just say you're on top of your game yesterday, but you wake up and you got a pinched nerve just in your upper thigh below your butt cheek, basically. And you're not going to move the same way that you did yesterday, sadly. You're going to adapt your routine based on how you feel that day and how you woke up in the pain that you're in. Good example, if you were happy yesterday and you're sad today or you're depressed today, you're not going to move the same way you did yesterday based on the fact that you were happy and you're probably more limber and you're probably more flexible yesterday. You're going to move based on how your body feels. And a lot of times when you're depressed and sad, your body feels like some type of dread or some type of, resistance, sadly, especially when you're angry. You're going to feel a lot more resistance, but you're going to have a lot more adrenaline running through your body. So it's going to be a bit more different when you react to things, sadly. Sometimes you're going to be so angry, your adrenaline's going to trick you into thinking that you could take a few hits and when you can't, sadly, or things along the lines of that. But that's typically how I move as a human being, and that's technically how people should move as a human being anyway. Because the sad part about that is you're not always going to be on the top of your game day after day after day after day. Even if you rehearsed it, practiced it, and all this stuff, you're not always going to be on top of your game. So I basically do it based on how I feel when I wake up that day, or how I feel in that moment. Let's just say a good example. I might wake up feeling good today, but let's just say an hour from now, I might trip and sprain my ankle. Now I'm not going to be on top of my game. So now I got to adjust everything accordingly so I can perform everything at the highest level I could possibly perform it at on a sprained ankle now. You see what I'm saying? That's typically how that works. But a lot of people don't want to do that. And a lot of people want to try to portray or fake it till they make it, basically. The sad part about faking it till you make it, you either end up injured or you end up falling flat at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. Or you end up feeling empty. So for those of you who always say that they got their white voice and they got their black voice when they're in the hood, you're basically fake at the end of the day. You're basically fake as fuck, basically. I'm always the same across the board. I'm the same in a meeting, outside a meeting, at the bank, with the bankers, with the loan officers, with the everybody. At the sales, on the sales floor buying a car, at my job, to the director, to the boss, to the owner of the company. I am the same across the board. No matter who it is. To the judge, to the cops, to the clerk, to the, you name it, I'm always the same across the board. I don't change because of the environment. I change based on how I feel at that moment. Now, can I compose myself and not be a dick? It depends on the situation. Sometimes pushing back actually can benefit you and benefit in your favor, sadly. Sometimes people need to learn when to, hold back or shut the fuck up, sadly, when it comes down to it, because there's a lot of people that will do stupid shit and then ruin their chances on a lot of shit at the end of the day, whether we all like it or not. The sad part about that is when it comes down to it, what a lot of people don't realize about some of the stuff that they get themselves into or some of the stuff that they do, a lot of the stuff is self-inflicted, sadly. A lot of the stuff that you'll run through in life is self-inflicted. You basically what I'm saying is you ruined your chance before you got in the door, or you ruined your chance the moment you opened your mouth, sadly. And a lot of times it's self-inflicted. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some outside forces sometimes, like, a person just being a complete, stuck-up bitch, or a person thinking they're better than you. But the sad part about that is at the end of the day, that can usually be mitigated by your attitude and how you feel at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm an asshole. So at the end of the day, you'll never out-asshole me. There's not been a woman alive that can out-asshole me. I've hurt many feelings. I've had many cops called on me for hurting many feelings. And I've been sued for emotional distress multiple times because I've hurt a female's feelings at the end of the day. I've won each time, but at the end of the day, I will always out-asshole a woman at the end of the day. And that's typically how I am. How you carry yourself shines through in your character and how you walk and how you talk and who you are, sadly. So if you fake it till you make it, it's actually not going to show as much as you actually believe in that you actually are and actually being that actual person, sadly. Case in point, me knowing I'm a criminal, typically a lot of people know that I'm capable of a lot of shit, sadly. In the back of their mind, anybody I deal with knows I'm capable of some bullshit, basically. There's a meme floating around that I actually put on one video where it reads, it's got SpongeBob, and it reads, when your coworker don't know that you used to be a thug before you got a career. The sad part about that is I always state this in a heartbeat. Look, dude, I always tell people, I always use the line, I wasn't always on the right side of the law. I always say that stuff in a heartbeat to people. Because the sad part about that, people ask me questions or people will say something to me. I go, look, dude, I wasn't always on the right side of the law. I'm going to just leave it at that. And to people who actually know me, they'll basically say something to the extent of, well, I don't understand how you did that. Well, like I said, I was a criminal before I actually got a career, basically. I was a career criminal before I actually got an actual, legal career, sadly. And these are things that I actually know about myself and I actually know how to control it and or stave it off and or have the right sense of mind not to use it when I don't need it, sadly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll use it sometimes, but I'm not going to always use it. It's kind of like if you have a lot of power, just because you have the power doesn't mean you need to use it. If you have the resources and the ability to do something, that doesn't mean you always need to do it, sadly. Because the sad part about that is now you're just showing off, and now you're just flexing for no reason. It'd be no different than a person who got slighted. Now they pull up in a Ferrari and they want to stunt on everybody now. Same concept. Same concept when you exert power over somebody, or, you're upset, so you want to, break out the heavy artillery or the men, or put guys outside people's houses. You're basically just flexing at that moment in time. It's easy to flex, but the sad part about that is it's much harder not to want to flex your power. Just like there's a fundamental difference between people who carry weapons and people who brag about carrying weapons. Typically, people who brag about carrying weapons are always the ones who either A, get into shit or get into a lot of trouble, or, always starting trouble or causing trouble, sadly, or ended up in trouble. When I mean trouble, I mean getting into shit, basically. The sad part about that, people who actually carry weapons and don't say anything about it are typically the ones that, walk through life, without a care in the world, or not bothered or unperturbed, or, not having to, do anything, or not have to worry about having a gangster tested, basically. Typically how that works. Typically, like a good example, a person that can still carries typically is not going to show you that they actually have a gun, for all intents and purposes. They're not going to advertise that they have a gun. They're not going to put all the signs in the world saying, you may not look like it, but we have guns on our property. No, that's not how a person actually conducts themselves. A real person that's a gun owner conducts herself. They typically just have it. They don't tell you about it. And when shit happens, then you find out about it, sadly. We are not going to advertise it. We're not going to tell you about it. We're not going to tell you all the shit we got. We're not going to tell you about all the heavy artillery we working with. That's not how that works. And the sad part about that is that's how you know when you're dealing with somebody who's a novice at this shit, or somebody who's either faking it or lying to you about stuff like this. That typically was sensing up a red flag. Anytime somebody has to resort to gun use and nothing else, you typically know that person's fake, or that person's scared, that person can't fight, or, that person's just basically a big bitch, basically. It's typically how it works. So anybody that advertises gun, goes straight to gun, or goes straight to pulling the gun, is automatically a bitch. The sad part about that is, and people will say, well, you don't know if that person has one. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't know if that person has one. The minute you got to pull out a gun, you pretty much escalated the situation beyond the point where it should have been escalated. Now you're trying to act like you're somebody you're not, sadly, to try to gain control of a situation that you never had control over in the first damn place, sadly. Same thing that goes for women. You're trying to gain control over a situation that you have no control over by saying we have to accept all this stuff. Is basically where I'm going with this. So, just like a woman would say, you have to set me for me because I'm big and beautiful. You have to set me for me. I should be able to I should be able to walk around naked like the men do. Well, the problem with that is men don't walk around with no drawers on and completely naked because they have a dick and they could get in trouble for that shit. Typically, men actually keep shorts on, so you can't walk around completely naked. It doesn't work like that. But as far as walking with your breast out and demanding things and all the stuff that women do in this day and age, you're basically trying to gain control of a situation that you don't have control over, whether you like it or not. The cops, the local police have no control over half the situations that go on. What makes you think you raising your voice and telling everybody this is what you deserve is going to make everybody actually, what makes you believe that you're actually going to gain control over the whole entire situation at the end of the day, when in fact you don't even have control of yourself. You barely have control of your own damn life. You can't get what you want, so you cry like a little bitch. And it's typically how this works. Because if you had control over your life, you would have control over yourself, and you would have control over your destiny and your situation. If you did. By acting a certain way and portraying yourself in a certain light, you don't have control over the situation in the least bit. By forcing stuff on people, that lets people know you have zero to no control over the situation at hand. By telling me I have to accept the fact that you're a big woman, and if I don't, I'm fat phobic, that lets me know you have no control over the situation at hand, whether you like it or not. By telling me that I have to accept you or I have to be able to handle you, that lets me know you have zero control over the situation at hand. Do you get where I'm going with this? Do you understand where I'm going with this? If you have to force something on somebody or you have to strong arm somebody into doing something, that lets them know you have no control or no authority over the situation at hand that is taking place. So just because you believe you should be able to walk around without no shirt on doesn't mean you have control over the situation at hand. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, there's always going to be those 15% and growing sick Val people that would do sick Val things to living things and human beings at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. And the sad part about that is a decent person would never be there to save you or protect you from those people. And sometimes a gun doesn't help you because it's very hard to pull a gun if you got smacked over the head. It's very hard to pull a gun if you got stabbed in the back. It's very hard to pull a gun or tase somebody or mace somebody when a person got the drop on you. Sad part about that is everybody walks around here talking about gun this, gun that, guns this, guns that. But the sad part about that is it's very hard to pull one when somebody got the drop on you. It's very hard to pull a gun when a person already stabbed you several times. It's very hard to pull a gun because let's just put it this way. When it comes to gun etiquette, typically the best people at pulling and drawing a gun can do it in about 7 seconds or less. 7 seconds or more. We'll say, I'm being nice by saying 7 seconds, but it's like 7 seconds or more to pull a gun, point and aim. Point, shoot, and aim, basically. Point, aim, and shoot, basically. Seven seconds minimum. I'm probably being nice, but 7 seconds minimum. You know how close a person can get to you in 7 seconds if your gun's not already pulled? You know how much of a panic you would be in to be able to pull that very quickly and have to shoot it that quick? Then who's to say you actually hit the person? You might shoot the ground. You might shoot behind the person. The person might actually be up on you and the barrel might be past their head. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of variables when it comes to stuff like that. And for you to say that you got everything under control and you really don't, that lets me know that you know nothing about your situation. You have very little situational awareness, and your gun knowledge extends to probably just shooting the damn thing and not knowing the actual time and distance you need before somebody closes the gap between you and pulling the gun and in your life, sadly. That's typically how that works. So how you carry yourself and how you portray yourself lets people know at the end of the day, you have no control over the situation. Like I said, just because you say so or just because you believe so doesn't make it so. At the end of the day, the science of psychology, the science of society, and the science of who people are would always trump what you believe, whether you like it or not. This is the reason why we got statistics. It's a science, people. You should probably think about it and look at it. Just because it doesn't happen to you means you're one of the lucky small percentages of people who it didn't happen to. There's still other variables that you can fall into at the end of the damn day, whether you like it or not, sadly. It is what it is. And the sad part about that is you have a lot of people that will say dumb stuff like that and say, well, I was raised by a single mother. I didn't become a pregnant teenager or I didn't go to jail, or I wasn't a runaway. Okay. But what about the other statistics? What about alcohol use and drug use underage? Well, technically, weed wasn't a drug. Technically, it's still illegal. So actually, it is. And using alcohol, last I checked, you have to be, 21 in America, about, 18 in Canada. I think it is 17 or 18 in Canada. So, yeah, no. And the sad part about that is everybody falls in. There's a reason why we have these statistics and statistical evidence. The sad part about that is just because you're not the 70% or the 80% or the 90% or the 60% doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Like I said, typically when a crime is committed against me, it's typically by a white woman. Does that make that everybody's experience? No. Still in America, 9 times out of 10, if you're going to be victimized, you're going to be victimized by a black person. In America, sadly. Statistically. It's sad, but it's true. However, I'm an exception to the rule. That's what we call exception to the rule. Most times, if I'm going to be fucked with or robbed or it's going to be some junky white woman. Anytime I'm accosted, it's going to be a white woman. Like some drunk white woman at the bar, basically. Or a drunk woman, period, falling down the street. Anytime I've ever been accosted or bothered by somebody, it's always been some drunk white woman, sadly. Anytime I've actually been attempted to be date raped, it's been by a white woman. But does that make it a statistic for everybody? No. That makes it an outlier to the rule. That makes me an outlier, basically, to a lot of the other statistics. Do I believe those other statistics to happen? Yeah, I'm well aware of those other statistics. I'm very good at having situational awareness enough not to put myself in that situation. And if I am in that situation, I have enough situational awareness to know where to stand and where to be at a moment's notice, sadly. That all comes down to perception. My perception of my surroundings. And if I know my surroundings are dangerous, I'm typically not going to want to do anything that can A, make it even more dangerous for me, or B, make it so that, I'm going to be accosted by somebody or bothered by somebody, sadly, or, drugged by somebody at the end of the day. Because I know my perception and I know I have very good situational awareness, sadly. And that's the cold hard truth. The sad part about that is nobody ever really wants to admit things like this. And nobody ever wants to accept the fact that, just because you haven't experienced it yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Which I always found funny when it comes to feminists, that they say, was it 1 in 3 women are raped? But, you believe that you should be able to walk around with no shirt on. If 1 in 3 women are raped, or 1 in 4, wherever they say, 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 women are raped, that means damn near every single woman has been a rape victim, basically. Why the fuck would you want to walk around with no shirt on if you were a rape victim? Why the fuck would you want to heighten your chances of being fucked with by doing something stupid like that? Or dressing a certain way? Or dressing more provocative? And no, I'm not victim shaming. I'm basically letting you know how the world actually works. The world's a sick world. It'll kick you in your fucking teeth. Then kick you in your fucking face while you're down. Then stomp the fucking life out of you. That's exactly how the world works. The world's not unicorns and rainbows. You might get lucky sometimes, but a lot of times you're not going to get fucking lucky. Or you might get lucky a lot of times, but there's going to be that one time when your ass doesn't get lucky. Then you're going to be thanking God that you're still a fuck alive. Or you're going to be kissing your ass. You're going to be holding your butts and kissing your ass goodbye, basically. That's typically how the world works, sadly. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to accept that. and nobody wants to take that on as in consideration because that'd be too much like right. That'd be too much. That's too much to handle. That's too much to take on. That's too much to deal with. You dressing provocatively or dressing appealing to somebody would be no different than me leaving a car parked in a fucking open in the middle of the hood with the keys in it. You got to expect shit to happen. Just like I expect my car to be stolen if I leave the keys in it running and the door wide open. If you're going to dress appealing and you know it's appealing because you want attention, there's consequences for your actions. For every action that you cause or do, there's an equal or greater reaction to that shit. And that's not just physics. That's real life. If I speed down the street, there's going to be a cop that pulls me over and gives me a ticket. Now, I can sit up here and say, well, technically, I was trying to get to where I need to go very quickly. So technically, the cop shouldn't have gave me a ticket. That's literally the argument that you're presenting. Literally the argument that you're trying to present for acting stupid or dressing a certain way, and you don't think it's fair that you get this attention. I don't think it's fair that a cop pulled me over for speeding, but he did. I don't think it's fair. I should be able to cuss out the cops and tell them to go to hell without them getting mad and wanting to beat my ass, but it doesn't happen. I should be able to and here's another analogy for that lovely stuff. You walking down the likelihood of you walking down the street and not getting attention is the same likelihood of me stepping on some niggas' Jordans and not causing a fight. Let that sink in for a second. You walking down the street dressing the way you do provocatively and or appealingly and not being bothered is would be the same likelihood as me stepping on a nigga's Jordans and not causing a fight or getting shot at. Let that sink in. Let that swirl around in your head. And think about that. The sad part about that is when it comes to women, they believe that they should be able to do all this stuff without fully thinking the shit through at the end of the day, whether they like it or not. They believe that they should be able to do a lot of dumb shit for no reason whatsoever and nothing happened to them. I believe that I should be able to walk around the store and not get followed. Thanks. Thanks, Just Tico. What's up? Taquita, just Taquita. The sad part about that is at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, how you look, how you act, and how you carry yourself is always going to be at the forefront of everybody's mind. We all judge books by their cover at the end of the day. It's human biology. It's human nature to do so. Because at the end of the day, what people fail to realize is that base instinct is to judge something and judge a situation. So you either A, run or fight, or in some cases, stay or go. That's base human biology and base human nature to judge a situation and judge it accordingly based on your safety and if you'll like the person, if your perception of the person, if you'll like the person or not, basically. It is base nature to do so. It's not fucking patriarchy to do so. It's base nature to believe, see something, and actually make a snap judgment to it. That's human biology. That's human evolution. That's cavemen That's your ancestral caveman shining through your DNA, letting you know, danger. Run, nigga, run. That's literally what that is. So people judging a book by their cover happens across the board for everyone. It always happens across the board for everyone. Everybody does it. Nobody does not do it. And people who say they don't do it is full of shit. Hell, I do it. My children do it. My dog does it. Animals in the animal kingdom do it on a regular basis. Well, no, it's based on, emotionally, once you think about it, it's based on how it makes them feel. If a woman's in a situation and you were to say something, even if you're a kind person, if you're not their type, you're creepy. Base female biology. Even if you're not a creepy person, you're a creepy person. The sad part about that is later on down the line when they get to know you and they start becoming your friend, they realize that you're not a creepy person. That's snap judgment, basically. That's basically how they felt in that moment in time. Now, if you're an attractive person, you could be a serial killer. You could be a rapist. If you're a very attractive person as a rapist or a serial killer, hell, that bitch could watch you murder somebody. And if you walk up to her and go, hey, how's your day? Or pull a Wendy Williams, how you doing? You know, that bitch will be turned on and she'll stop in her tracks and be talking to you, sadly. Because biologically, she's attracted to you. So she's not scared of you. Despite the fact that she should be scared of you, she's not. Because she's strongly attracted to you. It's typically how that works. So women basically do things based on how they feel. If they feel fear, obviously they're scared. If they feel comfortable, obviously because they're turned on or intrigued or want to know or things along the lines of that, sadly. Yeah. And the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, whether we all like it or not, we all do that at a base nature. Everybody does that at a base nature. Like a guy, like people always say, well, guys have it so good, they don't have to worry about walking down the street at night. No, guys do have to worry about walking down the street at night. Typically, guys are smart about how they walk down the street, where they walk down the street, and when they walk down the street. That's why guys are so comfortable with walking down the fucking street, because they mentally prepare for the shit and they know that, okay, that side of the street doesn't got any street lights on it. Why the fuck would I walk down that side of the street? Women, on the other hand, I feel safe walking in the dark. Oh, I'm getting robbed now. How about that? You know, that's typically women. And the sad part about that, this is how literally you could tell the difference between men and women. Go to a college campus. Typically what they'll tell you on a college campus, because I've been to a college campus, because I've been to college multiple times, is if you're going to be out, don't be out by yourself, be out in a group. If you've ever noticed, very rarely a guy is walking home by himself. He's usually walking home with him and a buddy. Women, on the other hand, these bitches think that they're invincible. These bitches will be walking down the street by themselves, drunk as fuck, or walking down the street impaired as fuck, or walking down the street looking at their phone the whole entire time. They literally think they're that invincible, and nothing can stop them or nothing will happen to them. Men will typically either A, get a ride to the door, or somebody will be watching their back as they walk to the door. And the sad part about that, that's typically how a lot of it works for men. Men basically know where they can and cannot walk at night, or which streets and what neighborhoods they can and cannot go to. Men basically know, based on evolutionary and biological facsimiles, that there's certain places, certain times, and certain things that they can and cannot do. It's not the fact that they're blessed, it's the fact that they're smart. It's not the fact that they're big and strong. It's the fact that they know that there's an off chance that if they do something wrong, they can be punched in the mouth, robbed, beat up, kicked, stabbed, killed, shot, all the above, basically. So no, they're not lucky. They're just smart about the shit that they do. They're very smart about the shit that they do. That's typically how men operate. Like me. Despite the fact that I grew up in the hood and I grew up in Central America, I still know that there are places that are off limits to me. I still know that there are places that if I just so happen to walk there, there's a high chance that I might be hospitalized. It is what it is, whether you like it or not. And like just Tickina says, I'm probably butchering it. I'm just saying say just tech. Walking with your phone in your hand basically makes you defenseless. It lowers your reaction time, it lowers your defenses, and it makes you an easy target at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. It also makes you impaired to the world because you're more likely to be hit by a bus, a car, and or hell, we'll even run away and say a fucking, horse-drawn buggy too. Because I've actually seen that actually happen. And Wynn knows what I'm talking about when I say this. In Pittsburgh, at certain times of the year, there's this guy that brings out this white horse in his buggy, and they take couples around on a little romantic ride in Pittsburgh. I actually seen a college student once walk out in front of the fucking horse and get trampled by a horse. I laughed my ass off. Watching this woman get trampled by a horse. I was on the ground rolling. Like, this bitch is stupid. I remember the Tinder experiment. Yeah, I said that already. I said that in the stream already about you could be a serial killer. She can literally watch you murder somebody, and you walk up to her and be like, "How you doing?" She'll overlook it. I said that already. But the thing about it, though, is the thing that you have to really understand about it is, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, women have this sense that shit can never happen to them because they grew up in a world that was they were so overprotected, so overcoddled, and they dealt with a lot of people that normally wouldn't lay a hand on them or wouldn't inflict physical harm on them. So they believe that, that shit wouldn't happen to them for some odd, awful reason. The sad part about that is men grow up in the world knowing that if they say something smart to another man, he's going to punch him in the fucking face. He's going to kick him. He's going to stab him. He's going to shoot them. So men grow up knowing that there's imminent danger around them at all times. This is typically why you can see a man in a relationship and he's basically checking a house and he's, checking up on people in his house, and you would see him as being overprotective or trying to be controlling, when in fact, one time that he doesn't call, your ass gets hit over the head and you're in a ditch somewhere. Or the one time you thought it'd be cool to not respond to his text messages, you end up raped or in an alleyway some damn where, hanging on for life, sadly. This is why men are protectors and providers, for the fact that they know that there's always imminent danger around the corner. They know real imminent danger. Women think they know danger, but the sad part about that, men know danger, they sense danger, they've been in danger, they've felt danger, and it hurts like hell. Women can only imagine what danger is, or think they know what danger is, unless they've been in multiple fights, and it's a whole other story. But typically, men know what danger is. They felt danger. They've been punched in the face. They've been kicked. They've been stumped. They've been beaten. They've been bullied. They've been shoved in lockers. They've been thrown down steps. They've had cigarettes put out on them. They've been beaten. They've been abused. They've been hit, kicked, everything spit on, the whole 9 yards, sadly. Men know this. Men live this. Men know of this. So men live accordingly based on this. That's typically how this stuff works. Because to a woman, being safe is boring. You're right. All this stuff, when you're being overprotective and all that stuff, that's boring. Because women like pushing the envelope. Women like drama. Women like excitement in their life. The sad part about that, it's all fun and games until they get maimed or scarred or they're hospitalized, then it's not funny anymore. Now they're upset because they were hospitalized. Not believing that they could possibly be hospitalized. Not believing that that can ever happen to them, quote unquote. It's typically how it works. Sad part about that is at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's sad that, everybody's perception is based on what they believe in a person or what they think a person is. There's been many times when I've dealt with people who women thought that they're, case in point, I've told this story multiple times. I've always found it funny how the men that women claim are alpha males or so sexy, so attractive, got the best genetics are the same ones when I'm walking down the street that the woman is literally holding her hand and trying to walk behind them for protection. And this big ass motherfucker is down there on her back running from me. I've always found it funny how that works. The sad part about that is what I notice about men like that is men are more likely to move and avoid me in those type of relationships than women are. Because the sad part about that is at the end of the day, women know in a split second and in certain instances, women know when somebody's more dangerous than another person. Women know when somebody walking on the streets is more dangerous than her man is. Women know that the person that they're dealing with is less scarier or less effective than a person that they're walking down the street that's walking towards them down the street. The sad part about that is I've seen more men hide behind women walking down the street than women hide behind men. And that's supposed to be your protector. That's supposed to be the person that protects you from danger. It's kind of like the one guy at the one game that I always bring up, the Pirate or Steeler game, whose wife got him punched out. She legit got him punched out at a game by some random black guy because she put her hands in his face and he stood up to try to defend his wife's honor and got knocked the fuck out. He probably has a concussion. He was laid the fuck out for a while, and the wife was just taking hits in the chin like she takes D to the face. So it's one of those things where you have to realize that a lot of times nowadays, women, when it comes to shit like that, women have more testosterone than a lot of the men that they date, sadly. Women have more of a strong chin than the men that they date nowadays, sadly. This is typically why. Is that probably an evolutionary thing? Probably because the men are getting softer, maybe. It's probably an evolutionary thing that happened in the last 60 years, last 100 years or so. Basically, because women are losing their protectors and providers, basically. So women got to be able to take it in the chin, technically. I guess if you want equality, the body says, "Up, we got to prepare for equality. We got to give you a stronger chin for equality." Sadly, so you can take these punches. Now, your husband may not be able to take these punches, or your boyfriend may not be able to take these punches, but you'll be able to take these punches. And that's typically how a lot of the time this stuff works. Because if you ever notice, whenever something like that happens, the husband or boyfriend is out like a light. The wife or girlfriend is taking chin shots like she's taking D on a cock carousel. To the face. To the face, my guy. If you've ever noticed. It's sad. Like, look at a lot of the crazy ass fights. Now, I don't know if the men are pulling punches, but typically you don't really need that much pressure to knock out a woman versus knocking out a man. Typically. But the sad part about that is, if you've ever noticed, the men go out like that. They're literally put to sleep after the first few chin checks. They're out like a light. Women, on the other hand, they're just taking shots to the chin like dick, to the mouth. Like, legit, think about that. The sad part about that is what a lot of people don't realize is that's exactly how life is working. That's exactly how it is nowadays, sadly, with women. The sad part about that is you can't sit up here and expect men to be men when they were raised and trained by single mothers. There's no man in that boy at all. There's zero man in that boy. There might be what? I'll give him 20% man. If you're raised by a single mother, I'll give you 20% man. But the sad part about that is there's no man in that boy. And you can't expect a man to be a man if you pick the wrong person. It's basically no different than, which is another topic for another day. The people you choose in your life, you have to learn to take responsibility for the people you choose in life. The people you choose to put in your life, like I was saying earlier, are direct reflection of who you are, whether you like it or not. So if you dated a fuck up, you dated a person that steals, that's a reflection on your character. It's no different than Latin culture, where your name is important. The family is important. All the way down to the family name, it's important. Anytime you can tarnish the family name, you brought disrespect to the family. Anytime you could do something that's disrespectful or that doesn't put respect on a family name, you're tarnishing the family name. The same thing goes for friends at the end of the day. If you have friends or if you're dating somebody who is not less than desirable, that's a direct reflection of who you are at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. You could claim to be the best person in the world. You could claim to be the nicest person in the world, but at the end of the day, it's a direct reflection of who you are as a human being. Because the sad part about that, I know a girl, like I said, who has a ratchet ass white friend, basically, who dresses like a bitch from a trap house. She claims she's a good person. And do I think she's a good person? No. Like I said, you are an average of all your friends, sadly. If that's your best friend, what is it about you that attracts people like that? I always ask this question. Then to top it off, if that's your best friend, then what are you hiding? What is it about you that make you want to keep this person around? And we're not going to say because, she was there for me through thick and thin. Okay, I have a lot of motherfuckers that was there for me for thick and thin. They're no longer here anymore. I have a lot of people I have some people that was there through me through thick and thin that are still here. Then I have people that are there for me through thick and thin that I outgrew. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is that person has some qualities that you're ashamed of, or that you don't want to show, or that you're just plain ashamed of at the end of the day. Like I said, you're an average of all your friends, whether you like it or not. It's sad and it's true. The sad part about that is people like that don't want to admit it, so they basically keep people around so they could feel less depressed or less bad about themselves, sadly. And I agree with you 100% on the whole entire men and every boy. The sad part about that is who's actually raising these boys. Most likely, more than likely, it's probably a woman, a single mom. Who's he listening to? That single mom. Why is he listening to that single mom? Because that's all that child has. At the end of the day, that's all that child has. It's sad, but it's true. And this is what a lot of people don't seem to understand. Like, I know a lot of boys who are good looking and have all the genetics and hit the genetic lottery, and women still cheat on them. I know a lot of men who hit the genetic lottery and look like Greek gods, and they got left for somebody. Their wife left them for somebody less attractive than they are. Just ask one of the Helmsworth brothers. At the end of the day, it comes down to that, basically. If you're raised by a very weak dad, if you're raised in a two-parent household by a very weak dad who doesn't have a backbone, or who is a sniveling little punk, you're typically going to grow up idolizing your mom or being more like your mother, sadly. Especially if your mom's a strong one in the relationship. And if you grew up in a single mother household, you're basically going to grow up with a lot of feminine traits. You're going to grow up with a lot of behaviors and mannerisms that your mom and any other female in your family portray, sadly. This is typically why you're seeing the rising black men wearing dresses and skinny boy jeans. It is what it is. But that's Red Pill Science 2. I mean, Red Pill Science Live 2. It was about how you carry yourself, how you act, and your attitude. Y'all have a blessed day. Be good to yourselves. Treat yourselves like milk. Do nothing but spoil yourselves. Oh, yeah, women do care heavily about sex. Because here's the thing about women and sex. Then I'll leave. The thing about it is women will be on social media saying sex isn't an important part of a relationship. That woman that says that shit is cheating on the person that she's in a relationship with somebody else. That's typically how that stuff actually works. Anytime you can see a woman say that on social media, she's cheating on her significant other, or she's thinking about cheating on her significant other with somebody else at the end of the day. That is usually a sign that she's going to cheat on you. Sadly. But I got to get out of here. Y'all be blessed. Be good to yourselves. Treat yourselves like milk. Do not spoil yourselves. I done held your hostage enough. Y'all be blessed. Have a good one. And outros.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Lovely.
Is that lovely?
Pretty sexy. Baby, don't leave
No,
me.
I want to.